Hello! Let's talk about The Shadow Rising, Book 4 of the Wheel of Time. That's a big old girl. The first part of this video is going to be spoiler-free, but then we're going to have some spoiler talk, but I'm going to give you plenty of warning so that you can leave when I start talking about spoilers, just in case you have not read this far in the series. Let me start off by saying that this book was damned good. Perhaps my favorite installment in this series. I might have to give it a little time to see how this read settles, but I'm pretty sure it's going to usurp The Great Hunt as my favorite Wheel of Time novel so far. Just so dang good. The previous 3 installments in the series followed a very similar pattern. Started off strongly, there was a big slog in the middle, and a great climax. But The Shadow Rising is better in many respects. The Shadow Rising is pretty slow. Not as slow as the previous 3 installments, but while the middle of the book seemed slow, it never felt like it was slogging on. And that's because even though the middle was long, very long book, over 40 hours if you're listening to the audiobook, there was a lot more substance and flavor in the middle stanza. Perhaps The Shadow Rising is a lot more balanced because there's a lot more action. There's a lot more action scenes in this one, it felt like. Perhaps it's a lot more balanced because there's a lot more humor. It is far and away the funniest installment of the series so far. Perhaps it's because there's more nudity. And not just the ceremonial nudity of the previous installments. There is that. But there did seem to be a lot more nudity in The Shadow Rising. No graphic sex scenes, actually no sex scenes at all, but there was some sexual innuendo. It definitely felt like this book transferred from being PG to PG-13. And I liked that. So I guess I'm saying the middle of this book was a lot better because there was more action, more humor, and more nudity. Now let's talk about romance. The one romantic pairing that was really good actually made this book quite emotional and made it a little bit of a heart-wrencher at times. I'm not going to get into spoilers at this point of the video, but let's just say there are 3 romantic pairings. One of them is really good. One of them could use some improvement, but it's not terrible anymore. And one is, it's just bad. Robert Jordan pulled off one good romantic subplot in book number 4, and it almost made it easy to forget all the abysmal, crappy, bad romantic subplots of the previous 3 installments. It was that good. One of the reasons I think the romance of The Shadow Rising is a lot better than the previous 3 installments because our young heroes are clearly maturing. Some are maturing at a faster rate, for sure, but they're all kind of growing up, which isn't too surprising because this book takes place, give or take, about a year after the start of the adventure in book number 1. It's good that our characters are growing up. They're finally maturing. They're finally starting to realize how high the stakes are. The battle between good and evil is ramping up, and the consequences are a lot more dire now. So I'm glad that these characters aren't just a bunch of preteens that are making stupid decisions and not being able to see the big picture. Robert Jordan also expanded upon the lore of the previous 3 novels, particularly the lore of the Aiel, the Sea Folk, and the Tuatha, or the Tinkers. I've mentioned before in previous videos about books in this series that I find it very interesting how Robert Jordan is able to slowly give the reader more information about the Dragon Reborn and how he's meant to defeat the Dark One by giving us all these different clues and details from all these different traditions, faiths, and peoples in this massive world, and combining all these different traditions and religious ideas to give us a more complete picture about what the Dragon Reborn is meant to do and how he's going to defeat the Dark One. It's all very interesting stuff. One of my favorite aspects of the series. After finishing The Shadow Rising, I am finally starting to understand why so many people in the fandom hate the Aes Sedai. I read the first 3 books, and yes, they seemed kind of sketch, but I didn't see the reason for all this hate and vitriol. But after finishing The Shadow Rising, I definitely understand why many people hate the Aes Sedai. I'm not going to get into spoilers yet, but they're sketch, and I don't like them either. I'm definitely team anti-Aes Sedai. Before I get into the spoiler part of the video, I want to say a few things. Favorite characters in The Shadow Rising? Perrin, Loial, Lyn. Least favorite characters? Nynaeve by a long shot, followed by Mat, but that's a very far away second. Favorite chapters? Chapters 42 and chapters 56. They both brought tears to my eyes. Amazing chapters. Robert Jordan painted a beautiful picture in those chapters. Most improved characters in this book? Rand and Perrin. Now, time for some spoiler talk in 3, 2, 1. Let me start off by saying this. The romantic pairing of Perrin and Faile is just perfect. It's just chef's kiss, great chemistry, great dialogue. This romantic pairing had me in tears during chapter 56. Just actually crying, tears dripping down my face. It added a lot of emotional substance to the story. It was definitely my favorite part of the entire read of The Shadow Rising. Just a great dynamic they have there. Speaking of romantic subplots, the romantic subplot between Rand and Elaine was just done very poorly. The worst pairing so far in the series. They're not a good fit. Their entire romance blossoms in the space of one chapter. I found it very hard to become emotionally invested in that romance because I can tell it's not going to make it, or at least I suspect it's not going to make it, because they're like head over heels in love, but then Rand wants to protect her, so he wants to send her away. She can't see through that, even though Rand's supposedly an idiot boy who has no guile in him, and she's supposed to be the next queen of Andor, so you'd think she'd be good at kind of playing politics, understanding the motives behind people's actions, but she takes everything personally, and she's very wishy-washy, and then she doesn't understand why Rand doesn't understand her. And I feel for these two Rivers boys in The Wheel of Time, because these girls are irrational. Robert Jordan definitely did not write the women characters very well, and it definitely shows in the Elaine and Rand romantic pairing. Who do I think would be a good match for Rand? Probably Avienta. They have good chemistry, good dialogue. Obviously, there's some buddied, emotional, loving feelings there. I think they'd be a cute couple. Or Rand and Lynn. Rand's constantly thinking about Lynn. He's like, oh, if only girls could be like Lynn, straightforward. And Lynn's always halfway across the world, and she's like, why do I keep thinking of Rand? I'm a fool girl. Obviously, they're going to eventually link up, be romantically involved. But I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, I'm pretty sure it's being foreshadowed that Rand is going to marry several people at once in this series. Perhaps he'll marry one person, that person will die, or perhaps he'll be in a polygamous marriage. They've mentioned polygamy in 2 novels out of the 4 so far, and they kind of explained how polygamy is done among the Aiel, and Rand is kind of half Aiel. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be a polygamist. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's my bad prediction, but I have a sense, I have a feel that they're going to do that. Speaking of Lynn, Lynn is one of my favorite characters. I'm not quite sure why. She gets along with everybody. She's not super immature. She does funny things. I like Lynn, but I wish she was more prominent in The Shadow Rising. She's a point of view character, but only for a very small section, less than 10%, certainly. And I'm pretty sure she's going to be a key character in the next few installments, perhaps the rest of the series. And I know she's going to end up with Rand. I just feel it in my bones. Robert Jordan definitely surprised me at the end of The Shadow Rising by pairing Lynn with Logain in a party. I think they're going to have a very interesting dynamic. I'm very interested in Logain, period. He was a very prominent character that was mentioned in the first installment, but he kind of fell off, and I kind of forgot about him. But then he popped up, and I was like, oh crap, that's Logain, the false dragon. And I sense a redemption arc coming. I think it's going to be a good one, and I love me a good redemption arc. In my honest, unprofessional opinion, Nynaeve is the worst part of The Shadow Rising. She is immature, she is impulsive, she has no control of her temper. It makes no sense how she was a village wisdom, how people were supposed to ask her for advice, because she seems to make the dumbest decisions throughout this entire book. And I guess the one saving grace for Nynaeve in this book is she's finally starting to understand that in her romantic pairing with Lan, she's going to have to make compromises, which shouldn't have taken 4 books to get to that point, because she's supposedly a wise person. She was the wisdom. She understands people, interpersonal relationships, supposedly. But she very rarely makes the right decisions when in regard to how she deals with people throughout the series. And I just can't stand Nynaeve as a character. Very unrealistic, because she's supposed to be the elder of the 2 Rivers, group of people. But just so immature. Don't like her at all. After Nynaeve, there is one point of view character in particular that I couldn't stand. They were making stupid decisions, and that character is Matt. And that's surprising because Matt is witty, Matt is funny, he's the comic relief of the previous 3 installments of the series, but he makes several stupid decisions in The Shadow Rising, particularly when he's walking through the doorways, through the magical artifacts, and he gets 3 wishes that he could get granted for a certain price, and he fumbles that. He gets 3 questions he could get answered, he fumbles that. It just doesn't seem like Matt would make these stupid decisions. I just don't understand. He's lucky that he's lucky, because he's kind of an idiot. We finally found out who the man who called himself Bors is. I was super excited about that, perhaps more excited than I should have been. But I remembered reading The Great Hunt over a year ago, and wondering who is the man who called himself Bors. And we finally figured that out, and that was very exciting. Perhaps it won't lead to much in the series. Perhaps it's not that big a deal. But it was kind of cool to see the stranger from the prologue of The Great Hunt make a reappearance and kind of be melded into the story. There are a plethora of characters in the Shadow Rising, but for the most part, it's the Perrin and Randall Thor show. They're the main two characters of this book, and they grow the most. They're the stars. The story of Perrin Goldeneyes, as he protects the two rivers from Trollocs and Dark Friends, was so good. And it was so much more interesting than reading along as Rand played politics with the Aiel. Honestly, if it wasn't for the funny dialogue between Rand and Avienta, and his visions in Roidion, which kind of expanded upon the lore of the traveling people and the Aiel, I wouldn't have enjoyed Rand's part of the story. I know he's the savior of this world. I know he's the Dragon Reborn, but he's just so dang boring. I really hope we just get some more color from Rand, because I can't stand him being the main hero of this entire journey. I am interested to see how Rand continues to interact with the Forsaken. That's going to be good. That's going to be interesting. It was nice to see the Aes Sedai run into some trouble in the Shadow Rising. Swan Sanche getting stilled and removed from power snuck up on me. I wasn't expecting that whatsoever. It's cool to see the Aes Sedai put in a more vulnerable position because they've seemed all-powerful throughout the series so far. It's nice to see them humble a little bit, especially because they're the people that kind of pull the strings behind the scenes. And it's nice to see things not go according to plan for them. I think that's going to make for a lot more interesting wrinkles in the story structure of the series. Some quick questions before I close. Who is Lord Luke really? What is the Tower of Genji? And what does it mean for the overall story? And what is going to happen to Matt? Where does he go from here? He's lagging behind Rand and Perrin in terms of character development. And I just want to know what's going to happen. But I guess I'll find out. Thank you for watching my book review. If you liked it, push the little thumbs up icon. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear me talk about any other books. And leave a comment below about what you thought about The Shadow Rising. And I'll see you guys next time.